All right, welcome back to my channel, everybody. I am joined today by a very special guest, a brand new friend of mine, Robert Bauer, who was introduced, Heidi, my friend Heidi Pop introduced us, and we did a live recently on her channel. And so welcome, Robert, to my channel. I'm really excited to have you today.
It's my pleasure and honor. Thank you, Sherri.
Yes, well, so Robert, God, you have such a long bio, so I'm just going to read the beginning part. It's so impressive too. Um, so Robert has spent greater than 50 years as a musician, producer, technologist, building software and hardware for Fortune 500 organizations. He's a voice artist, an author, a Shiatsu practitioner, a Tai Chi instructor, business consultant, content creator, and et cetera, et cetera, and et cetera. So I'm going to let you, Robert, tell us a little bit, a brief background about you, and tell everybody who's watching from my channel that may not know who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into what we want to talk about today.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. I am one of those people who is wandering in the wonder and pondering the possibilities. Um, I guess in a sense, a lot of people go through life and they have the black sheep moment in their friends and family where they're kind of the weirdo that sits outside and everybody stares at them and they don't invite them. I kind of went through some of that in my childhood, and what it led me to was just a journey of trying to understand and explore the reality that I inhabited. And I got all these different delineations from theologies and religions to the science and philosophies. And I found that I had this insatiable curiosity. And when that got peaked and somebody flipped that switch, I ended up in this overly fertilized field of imagination. So I started an exploration of trying to figure out what's going on. What is it that I'm enjoying and what am I not enjoying? What am I resonating with? And on
Mhm.
the topic of our uh, subject of frequency and vibration, I was in a musical family, so there was always a lot of music, and I found that the music was such a profound experience for me that I just wanted to continually absorb it and be involved in it and be absorbed by it. So I started playing guitar at 13. I've been playing for the last 53 years. And I found that music, coming from not only a musical family, but just the resonance of sound and music within my being was something that I realized that if I wasn't a human being navigating the reality that I'm inhabiting and that we're all inhabiting, that I'd be a musical note looking for a tune to play on. So that pursuit and that resonance, that expression and feeling that I have with sound and music was something that I just have always resonated with and always pursued. And it led to a very eclectic experience with music. Everything. I grew up in the 60s and 70s in Southern California. So the music scene, as most people know now, they refer to it as classic rock. And I'm going, well, does that mean I'm classic? Um, but I grew up with all of that explosion of just incredible inspiration and writing and music exploration. And that got me down a long path of a very eclectic experience, everything from Bach to the Beatles.
Mhm.
And as I pursued my technology career and I started to look at this information that I was experiencing in the reality that I inhabited, I started to realize that there was a lot more going on than just what we would hear on the radio, see on the TV, read in books. There was a fundamental frequency set of vibrations, and it starts with sound and music. And so I pursued that and I started diving deeper into what are the metrics that we measure sound and light with. In our sciences, we have these things that we call measurements that we put around things, frequencies of light and sound and radio waves and all the unseen as well as the seen. And our science models kind of put a set of metrics around those things so that we can kind of get a grasp of them and try to maybe understand and see where they fit. So I stumbled into technology, and the next thing I knew, I was doing bits and bytes, ones and zeros. And I was building software and traveling around the world selling this communication software to all these major companies. And they were using it to do their communication between one another. And it's all ones and zeros, but we
Mhm.
were in 14 different languages and had all these standard sets to enable the communication, basically sending orders and invoices and ship notices and stuff between themselves, which is today what we are doing when we go to PayPal, when we go to Amazon. So the technology that's behind all that is what I was working on back in the early 90s when the internet was becoming out and starting to, take over. So as I pursued the information within the experiences and opportunities that I had, I started to look even deeper. And I discovered this thing called first principles thinking, which is essentially getting to what I refer to as the nut of the nugget of whatever the subject is, whatever the topic is. And today we can get into all kinds of different theologies, philosophies, sciences, belief systems, and we can see the wrapping around all of this fundamental knowledge. The Hermetic principles, everything, the first one is mentalism. Everything is mental, meaning everything is consciousness. And what's interesting is the more I've gotten into the sciences and looked at different domains, I found that when you look into whatever the knowledge domain is, health, science, medicine, physics, doesn't matter. Each one of these knowledge silos have a whole bunch of information in them that are governed by the few, and they are given the Ohio Gozaimus and, sanction that this is the truth and the authority over this knowledge. And every time I dive in, I find about 50% of it is questionable. And if the other 50% is either missing or just completely dismissed. And I wonder, why is that? Why is information that's valid, that is obviously observationally experienced, it's there? Why are these things dismissed? Why are people discounting them? And we've seen, and I'll try to wrap this up here, but we've seen over the last several years people going through this whole cancel culture, right? People being canceled and silenced for the information that they're bringing forth, for the things that they want to talk about, that they have information to talk about. And what I realized was whenever there's something that people are trying to shut down, it's because there's probably some truth in there that people are afraid of.
Yeah.
So I decided that I was going to be a warrior and a soldier in the search for information. Not necessarily truth, not necessarily facts, because truth and facts are two different things. But there is without a doubt, there is information. And everybody is processing that information based on the filters and the frameworks that they've been given, that they've either adopted or built themselves. And I think what people are seeing now is that one of the last shows I did in 2019 was called The Knowledge Apocalypse, the end of the curated narrative. And I think that that's what we're seeing right now. The truth of the reality that we inhabit has been obfuscated and subverted and severely mangled for centuries, if not millennia. And we're starting to see the truth. So that's what I'm trying to do, is explore the information that's available and try to sort it out.
I love that, Robert. And I think that the avenues in which you've gone down to seek that knowledge or to seek that information is very well rounded. And I think you brought up a lot of good points, but historically, I feel like we have been misguided into a very logical left brain educational system where it's absent of spirituality, because if it's not religious, there's a religion and that's it. That's what they try to keep us in that box of limitation. So there's logic, information that's analytical and left brain, and then there's religion. That's it. Those are the only two. Anything that strays out of that is considered voodoo or make-believe and many other things. And I think what's beautiful about right now in our history is the combination or the integration of spirituality and science, because we do need the information and the knowledge is really important. And I value that. So when I meet someone like you, who's very well-rounded, very educated, very intelligent in many different avenues, but you're also very spiritual, and you're not the type of person, at least that it seems to me, that you're not the type of person that feels like there's ever an end to the information, because we're constantly learning, we're constantly seeking more, because we can never retain everything all at once, at least not in these brains. We can in our consciousness, but not in human in the human mode. And so I think that this is a really exciting period of humanity because we are combining the spirituality and the science. And when you combine the two, I think it's explosions. And that's where people are having grand epiphanies and awakenings because that is occurring. And so they're putting those two thought processes together, the left and the right brain. And when they work together, right, the possibilities are absolutely infinite. What do
I
you
think
think?
that you're absolutely right. And one of the things that people don't realize is that before the mechanistic materialism science model and logic model that we use today, that's given us all this wonderful technology, the stuff that we're doing now came from that materialistic mechanistic model. And that's when Descartes, back in the 1700s, created what's known as Cartesian dualism, where the whole idea of the material world, science was the lord over, and the spiritual world, God, angels, and the conscious mind of man was to the church. And they created this separation. Prior to that, literally every civilization that we've encountered and we've decoded their cosmology has the same characteristics and attributes. They all have the story of somebody from up there came down here. They told us stuff, they gave us stuff, they taught us stuff, and hell, they may even had something to do with our engineering, with how we have
Mhm.
become. Well, in all of these cosmologies, all of reality was alive. Everything was a living organism, not just ourselves, but the plants, the animals, the earth, the planets, the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe. Everything was living, everything had consciousness in it.
Right.
And that's the way that everybody thought about the reality they inhabited. Well, our modern sciences have said, no, if you can't see it, you can't weigh it, you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. So this spiritual stuff, these angels and demons and gods and consciousness, we can't define it. We can't put it into our men math models and machines to come out with an answer to define it because it doesn't, it surpasses the sciences and the thinking that are in use today. So in fact, in all of the current sciences, consciousness is known as the hard problem because they can't figure it out. They can't define it. So it introduces what is referred to as the observer effect. You can't have somebody watching an experiment because it's going to affect that experiment. So people have to not be paying attention to it in order to hopefully get some kind of right answer. Well, that's where the entire system has failed, not only society but humanity, in my opinion. What I believe is that consciousness is the reason that everything exists. The one thing that is undeniable with all of our individual human experiences is that we all experience this thing called consciousness. We can't define it. There's all kinds of attempts and people, again, through theologies and philosophies, to explain what it is and how it
Right.
works. But at the fundamental, going back to what I was saying about first principles thinking and getting to the nut of the nugget, what I decided to do was look at consciousness and just figure out what are the characteristics, what are the attributes, how does it work? I don't need to know why it works it does the way it does. I want to know how it works.
Mhm.
So I fundamentally looked at it and said, well, consciousness is something that everybody experiences. What are the characteristics of consciousness? Well, it seems as though it expresses itself in energy. Everything that we see, we hear, we touch, all of our senses, and then all of the bands of information and frequencies outside of our senses are there whether we know them or not. So
Yeah.
we're doing this over the internet. Some of it's probably going through satellite and microwaves. Some of it may be going through actually hard cables. But we can't, it's happening because that's just the nature of how it works. We've learned how to harness it. Even today, there's no definition for electricity that anybody agrees on. And there's a whole bunch of learned debates and scholarly discussions on what is gravity. No, but everybody's got something. Gravitational magnetism, all these different plasma. I think what we're really in is a plasma universe in an electric universe that is the result of consciousness because of the energy that makes up consciousness. And that energy has some common characteristics. It's always in motion. We are always in the next. I used to, in the 90s, I was very much a part of the whole new age kind of thing where, you got to be in the now.
Mhm.
And I started, in seeking the one. Well, as I continued to look for the now and the one, I realized that we're never in the now, we're always in the next.
It's true. It's true.
And so to try to find the now, you can only plant yourself there and get stuck while the rest of you is moving forward.
It's so
And
true.
and seeking the one was, that's why we have all these different belief systems and religions and even some of the philosophies and sciences. The one is if everything is consciousness and consciousness expresses its forward motion or its motion, whether it's forward, wherever it's going, it's always in motion. It's always creating more. There's a creation constant to consciousness. That creation and that motion is expressed through energy. Energy is expressed in an infinite field of frequencies. Everything we measure has a frequency to it. Well, to me, that's the common characteristics of what consciousness is and how it manifests itself. Why it does it, how it got started, completely open questions, and everybody can go on through the end of
Yeah.
time. But at
Yeah.
the bottom line is that's how it works. So I decided that I was going to take that and recraft and reframe the way that people think about consciousness and the mental process that we experience with consciousness. No science, no philosophy, no religion. It's just observation. This is how it works. Well, how does it express itself? How do we get in it? How do we maneuver it? How do we navigate the most positive path in it? Well, there's all kinds of different delineations and stories that people have crafted around the nugget of of the fact of the way it works. So I just said, I'm stripping all that stuff out.
Yeah.
I want to see how it really works. And then I want to see how it expresses itself. And that's where the whole idea of music and sound and frequency became a very important part of my journey. The resonance that I feel with sound and music is just so profound that I could, like I said, if I wasn't a human being in a biological carbon-based meat suit, I'd be a tune looking for a song to play on. And I think that that's where the real power of things like what you're doing, you and Heidi, with children and helping them understand the essence of the vibration and the frequencies that they are, and that the power and possibility of consciousness is really where the future is. And I am so glad to see people like you doing what you're doing to get that awareness to children, to the next generation. What you guys are doing with this current generation, I can only imagine what the next generation after them
Right.
are going to be like. I mean, we're going to be in this powerful, expressive, vibratory, and frequency-based reality that I think is just going to be so full of potential that people have no idea how
Mhm.
powerful it's going to be.
Absolutely. And I love the journey that your mind and your consciousness takes me on as I listen to you. And I think it's such a positive and uplifting contribution to the collective information right now, because the information you're giving from the information that you've retrieved throughout your years, someone is learning from this as they listen to this right now. And I think it's so synchronistic and so beautiful. And you brought up so many good points, but I love the conversation of frequency and consciousness. This is what got me going many years ago. That's the question that I had after starting to have my children of how can we create a better world? And all the whys resulted in, well, consciousness and energy. It was the root of everything. And I learned that on my own in my young years. And I wanted to understand more. Well, how does it work? Why? And I wrote my first book, Intuitive Transformation Evolution, simply on elements of consciousness and our innate knowing and our abilities to experience through emotions, but how those emotions can affect us both positively and negatively. And it's all about frequency. And it was just mind-blowing for myself. And I just wanted to share that with as many people that wanted to listen to it. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I think I've learned throughout my journey, because when you, like I said, when you add the spiritual element to the science, what you can't put into an algorithm, like you mentioned, that void is filled with the energy, the space of the unseen, the unprovable, which is the spirituality. When you combine the two, all the gaps get filled up. And that's where we have true discoveries and we evolve as a species that way. And I think that one of the biggest misconceptions that I call them the dark players, the players, the people, the beings, the network that tries to control this grid, or have for many thousands of years, but no longer do, or are working their way out. They have wanted to take over or to recreate the consciousness. And in their misguided attempt, I believe that they were trying to find that within the human body, within the brain, within the cerebral spinal fluid, because that is where an essence of our consciousness is stored, because it's water and it has light codes within it. And I think that in their minds, they can extract our consciousness that way to recreate, but you cannot recreate consciousness. It does not exist. It evolves, it transmutes, it shifts over time, that you cannot create it. So they've spent all of this time, all of these years creating hybrids, doing all of these programs to create something that can't be created. And it's up to us in our innate blocked, what I believe is our blocked DNA. It's dormant because they've tried to block it. But we have the ability, and the way that we unlock our dormant DNA is through activating our consciousness. When we evolve and we transmute and we shift into higher densities, higher frequencies of information and dimensions, we have the ability to unlock those aspects of our DNA that have been dormant. And they're trying to recreate it when we have the power to access it and to expand it ourselves. And when I learned that, it was, again, another life-changing epiphany for me. So my goal, one of my biggest goals, is to teach children that you have the power. You have the innate ability. You can do anything. You can manifest anything. You can help to co-create. Your mind is powerful. You can use it for good. You can use it for bad. And when you help children of a young age with an expanded consciousness trying to evolve through a human brain and a human DNA and those limitations in 3D, if we can just cultivate this thought formations early on and help them really understand all of these things that I'm learning as a 20, 30, 40-year-old woman, they learn at 3, 4, 5 years old. And it, like you said, it'll change and shift the trajectory of children generations to come, where they will already be born with that knowing, and then they expand on it even more. It's so exciting to think about it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you touch on a couple of things there. One, the idea of this, the folks that have been kind of navigating and holding on and trying to, herd the sleeple and the sheeple and all of those variations of the human forms and states. There has been, like for right now, we are going through an extremely powerful astrological and astronomical set of circumstances that a lot of people, I have my astrologer, Jeff Harmon. I've been with him for about 10 years, done a number of shows with him, and he goes into the sidereal, which is the sun-based astrological leanings on the way that planets and their energies and so forth align and do different things, versus Western, which is tropical. But there's a lot of overlap. But a lot of people go, well, the astrology stuff is just, it's a bunch of woo-woo, mumbo-jumbo stuff. And they don't realize that throughout, again, going back to the cosmology of all the civilizations that I was talking about and how everybody thought everything was alive, astrology is the first science and the first data set of information in the Informatica that we have been able to decode anywhere, whether it's carvings on rocks or some jots of notes and things on clay tablets or scripts and papyrus. The fundamental energies and information was based on the stars. What were the planets doing? The stars in Greek mythology and their wisdom set were living gods, the visible gods, as Plato referred to them. So the energies of what we're going through right now is very profound. It's very unique. And I think what I'm seeing is there are cycles within cycles of the motion of consciousness and the energy of the frequency fields. And they cycle in and out. They're individual, yet they're collective. And they go in and out within and without one another. And I think what we're seeing right now is the end of a 400-year cycle, wherein the folks that you mentioned have been controlling everyone and trying to control the DNA, as you mentioned, and the thought patterns and the way in which we think. One of the fundamental tenets of my Informatica philosophy is language is the operating system of the mind. So the words, the letters, the sounds, the symbols, all have specific meanings, and they've been packaged and carefully crafted and curated for thought streams, for mind streams, and a lot of them being mind parasites and mind worms.
Yep.
And that's how they've controlled things. Well, that 400-year cycle these folks have been writing is coming to an end. We're in a paradox of change in the energy cycles of the cosmos, of the universe, and in particular as it relates to the focus of our experience here on Earth. So as that cycle, that 400-year cycle is waning, this new one is waxing and it's coming up. So we're in the crosshairs of this paradigm paradox shift. And it's just fascinating to watch. It's real messy because you got the last energy going out and it's fighting to keep as much as it can. The new energy is coming up and they're going, oh my God, this life that I experience, this consciousness that I see and that I experience is just beyond anything that I've been told. Because of what I've been told is it doesn't exist, or it's, in fact, in some of the materialistic models, they're trying to dismiss consciousness by saying it's just an illusion of the neurons and the chemicals and the biology that's firing off in our minds. Well, that doesn't do anything other than explain that an illusion is an aspect of consciousness. You can't get rid of consciousness by saying it's an illusion. So there's things like this that people are starting to realize and are waking up to. And the energy that's coming in is essentially a portal to an awakening, to a sense of awareness of the infinite fields of frequencies that are the result of consciousness that we all inhabit. So the second point that you made that I wanted to touch on is the mind and our consciousness. The materialistic mechanistic model is that our brain is where the mind is. And that's, to me, that's not where it is. The mind is in consciousness. And the brain happens to be it's the neural organ, just like our heart is the circulatory and blood organ of our biological meat suit. It is where the interface of consciousness and mind inhabits our biological representation, but it is completely separate. So to me, consciousness is why everything exists. The energy of consciousness is what creates the reality. The frequency sets within that energy is where all of these different things people talk about, omnidimensional, hyperdimensional, interdimensional, all these dimensional things. And to me, those are just different aspects of the infinite field of frequencies. So it's not necessarily a shifting in and out of, it's being a part of or not. And we are individual, unique frequency stamps and signatures of consciousness, which is why we connect to and have this conscious experience. But that individual signature that makes us is what's inhabiting the meat suit we're having now. So when the meat suit is done and we go through, there's this whole thing about in various belief systems of reincarnation, multiple lives going through different cycles. I think that happens, but I refer to it as an iteration, that unique individual frequency stamp that we are created from consciousness goes through cycles itself, because everything is cycles within cycles of frequencies of energy. So there's nothing mystical about it. There's nothing magical about it. It is just it. It is the way it is. So when I got to that simplicity of reality and I realized that I'm just a unique frequency stamp, just like you and everybody else, and we are here going through some cycle of iterations in this physical reality to learn whatever it is we're supposed to learn, because learning is a constant, because consciousness is always in motion, creating something new. Ergo,
Mhm.
you're always learning the new. And going back to what you and Heidi are doing with creating learning for these precious, unique, individual, new frequency stamps is where the real power and the promise is, because they're the ones that are coming in fresh, if you will, and you guys are you're giving them the opportunity to be able to experience and realize the reality that they inhabit in its fundamental and its purest form. And we can do that whether we're 2 or 62 or 100, because it's the natural part of the way consciousness works. So if you're not learning, if you're not engaging your mind, you're not firing off the meat part, the biological part of our brain, which is
Yes.
where the interface for this consciousness happens. But it's not just the brain. The frequency sets are all throughout our entire biological being. We can feel things without thinking them,
Mhm.
right? So
Yep.
our entire body is nothing but a huge sensor set. So being able to, it's like when we did the show with Heidi, and we showed the Carol and Corey with the kids that are reading books with mind folds.
Yeah.
Talk about reality and just the innate nature of consciousness. That is what is the reality that we inhabit, and that's been sequestered and suppressed for centuries, if not millennia. Mystery schools and the mystic arts have kept some of this knowledge, secret societies,
Yeah.
and they've kind of kept it to themselves and leaked a little bit of it out here and there. But what those people were doing was taking the knowledge of reality and preserving it from these idiots that have been trying to run and ruin everything. And they've done a sweet job of it, but they have reached the end of their cycle. The future and the now and the next is here, and it's the power is profound. And I'm honored to be here and be a part of it. And I can't wait to get around the other side of this dumpster fire and see the
Yeah.
wonderfulness that's going to unfold.
Yeah. And I think also I call it the energetic blueprint of each individual person, and their consciousness, much like a fingerprint, is what you're talking about. And I think that the waves, what I'm seeing rather, are the waves of children that are coming through in the last 15 years, 10 years, and 5 in the last 3. I mean, they're more powerful. Their light is much stronger. Their frequency is much higher. Their density of consciousness is much higher. Many of them are already evolved to light beings, and they are descending, coming into our atmosphere to incarnate as a human, but they're not human. Nothing about them is human, and they're really just here to help with this transitionary period. And they need us as the adults to be their ambassadors, the ones that are going to help guide them and the ones that are going to protect them as much as possible, but also be the liaison between the rest of humanity. Because the rest of humanity that doesn't understand who they are says they're children. They're not normal. They're different, but in a bad way. They're not, they don't fit in with the norms of society. They label them, they degrade them, because people don't like change. People who are comfortable in their 3D consciousness maybe aren't ready to evolve, so they don't want the change. So there are many people resisting. We can see that every day. You go out to the grocery store, you could very easy to find one or two out in public. They're resisting the change. And I believe these children come in with such a high frequency bandwidth that they are passively affecting people in public that they don't even talk to. They pass by each other in the store, and they leave what I call this energetic code or an imprint from their own blueprint, and it actually integrates into the energy field of that person. And it's not to go against their free will, though. It's almost as it's a soul's transmission of energy and an exchange. And if this person over here wants it, then that frequency code can work within their light and help them go through a transitionary period or awakening, or just even something very small, a very small shift, or planting seeds like we talk about. And if the soul says, nope, I'm not ready, I don't want it, then the code would just dissolve. So there's no free will that's being, we're not taking advantage. They're not taking advantage of those 3D people, but they're here to elevate. They're here to they're so powerful, Robert. The frequency that they hold actually distorts and disrupts the EMFs and the voice of God technology, the mirror portals, the portals that are everywhere, all over. The lower vibrational entities are afraid of them. And so they are more powerful than we even realize. And I think that there are so many ways that this realm, this darker realm, there are so many things that I call 3D interference and 3D influence that does everything they can to dim their light. And I want to go back to a powerful topic, which is what you're an expert in, is music. I agree with you wholeheartedly that music is a frequency of the soul. There's so much information, so many light codes, so much light language stored within music and the melodies. And when you said I'm a melody in the universe looking to play a song, or however you said it, I feel like we all are, because we all have a frequency of beautiful harmony with each one of our blueprints. And with that, when they started putting words into our vocabulary to break up those harmonies, it disrupts and distorts, and the program starts. Like you mentioned, the words have spells within them. So I want to talk about music today and what you think, how you think we have evolved or devolved in some time eras with the music, of how it used to enhance and elevate us, how we've gone through this period of devolving, distorting and disrupting, and how they target children with it now. What are your thoughts on that? Because that's a big one for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, it's a deep and wide subject. One of the things that is really important to understand, going back to the nature of reality and the consciousness that creates that reality, is what's known as the natural harmonics. So within this frequency set, this infinite field of frequencies that come from the energy of consciousness, there are natural rhythms and natural cycles and natural harmonies that exist. They just resonate because of the way that it unfolds itself. Why? That's open for long, deep discussions and speculation. But nonetheless, it exists. So up until the Renaissance, essentially the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, one of the things that was very difficult for music is that there wasn't an agreed to what's known as temperament, which means the tuning itself. You had this natural harmonic frequencies, but then if you had an instrument and you wanted to, for example, a piano, and you wanted to play in the key of A, the natural harmony of A, or the natural key of A in that frequency, and then you wanted to play in a different key, you would have to retune the instrument because it was set to the natural harmonics.
Right.
Well, this is where science came in, and Pythagoras actually realized this, and they called it the uh, Pythagorean comma. And what they realized was in the harmonic sequence, the first, the third, the fifth, and as you go up to the eighth, which is an octave, that needed a little tweak to it in the fifth harmonic. And once you made that mathematical tweak in that fifth harmonic, now you could play in any key that you wanted. You didn't have to retune the instrument to play. That breakthrough of the the temperament series, the natural temperament, is what enabled everything from Bach to the Beatles. So the 12-tone system that we use in the West for all the music that we have today is based off of that mathematical tweak to the natural harmonic scale.
Wow.
Now, and it's really fundamental to the what we listen to, right? Now, if you get into Eastern and Asian, I mean, they get into microtones. Microtonals have 96 different notes in them. We have 12. So there's really a fine tuning of the ability to manipulate these harmonics. Well, what's happened, in my opinion, is there's a bunch of different discourses going on about whether it's A440 hertz or is it A432.
Right.
which is more natural than normal. But putting that discussion aside for a second, the keys to music are harmony and rhythm. Harmony in the sense of what notes are making what chords, what melody is flowing over what those chords are, and what the rhythms are. The most fundamental original instruments are the voice and sticks on rocks, and then drums. When you see some of the transcendental aspects of what different tribes use for their ceremonies, there is a lot of rhythm, and there's some chanting and different tones and melodies, if you will. That is the most fundamental nature of what affects us in music. The manipulation thereof is where a lot of the crafty folks have gone in, and Tavistock and all these other different groups have come in and said, well, we can really affect these carbon-based meat suits by taking this frequency and putting it into this rhythm and making them feel this way or feel that way. That's what we experienced, what I experienced back in the 60s and 70s, with this explosion of just all kinds of really great, not only melodies and rhythms and chords, but words, and how those words went into songs. What we're hearing today is not only the least amount of all of that, but it's a bunch of manufactured crap. The music that's out there today, you can look at, I can't even think, Beyonce is one that comes to mind. I think there's another one called Cardi B or some. I don't listen to any of the modern stuff unless I have to, or I'm doing some research on it. If you look at how many songwriters, how many producers, there's like dozens on these songs that have the same repeating lyric and the same rhythm, and it's boring as hell, and it's a bunch of fake instruments. And you look at it and you go, well, Joni Mitchell wrote all of her stuff by herself, and it was some of the most profound music, great lyrics that reached the soul. So the sound and music aspect of interacting with and influencing our carbon-based biological system is extremely profound. It is something that is not only can reach the inner consciousness resonance that we have, but it can manipulate the hell out of it. And that's the thing that's going on now that really just disappoints me. And I try to call that out every time I see it. But I try to spend the majority of my time in a sound bath, in a set of frequencies that is really resonating with me as I feel and as I experience and think in the mind of consciousness. Because sound and frequency, music is just another frequency set of the energies from the infinite field of frequencies. So the more resonant that they are, the more fun that you can have with it, the better they make you feel. That's where people resonate with things and enjoy them. Children, to me, one of the most profound things that and it doesn't matter the age, but the most important is on these new star seeds and souls and frequency signatures that are coming in, exposing them to and letting them find the resonance within music that they really resonate with is one of the most important things that can be done for them. In music, you can learn science, you can learn language, you can learn the harmonics, history. Music is one of the most profound subjects where you can teach a whole wide variety of different subjects and learn from it as you grow with it. So what's going on today is crap, but fortunately there's a lot of really good stuff out there that can help people find that resonance and find the importance of sound and music from their own experience.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The frequency of the music that we listen to can either uplift us, it could promote wellness and thought formations and imagination, and it could do so many positive things. It can motivate us, excite us, it could help us through heartache. Sometimes we like to listen to the sadder music because it brings us into that vibration as long as we need to, and then we heal from it and we move forward. But a lot of the music today, like a lot of schools let children listen to their ear pods or whatever you call them, during class these days, let them listen to music. One, there's a whole other reason why they shouldn't be doing that, just because of the frequencies being emitted. But the music that they listen to, if they're listening, many of them are listening to the modern day rap, a lot of fake musical tunes and notes like that are around the 440 hertz ish, around there, that's disrupting their harmony. And it's causing dis-ease, disorientation, confusion, agitation, depression, depending on what they're listening to. And these children have no idea, not to mention the lyrics that go along with the melodies and the programming, manipulation, the subliminal messaging. I mean, it's just, all of it's bad. And I'll share with you guys something really quickly. I never let my daughter listen to that music. My sons, they never really listen to it. I like electronic music. That's my favorite, like chill music, like Thievery Corporation and that's the type of music I've always listened to. And like soft electronic. And my daughter started at a homeschool pod in this year, and the girls were listening to all of the mainstream. I'll just say mainstream. I don't want to call any artists out. And I try to be a cool mom, and I slowly started to let her listen to the music within reason, but it got out of hand. And I'm telling you, Robert, and everyone watching this as a warning, because it happened to me, and everyone knows why I work with children and how serious I take it. And it happened to my own daughter. I let her listen to it, and she changed as a person within 2.5 months. She was completely different. She thought different. She talked different. She looked different. Everything about her persona changed, and right in front of my eyes. And I couldn't believe it. I said, this music changed you as a person, as a human, everything about you. And I abruptly took it all away. And I said, that's enough. And I couldn't believe it. It happened right in front of my eyes. Now, perhaps that was a lesson that her and I signed on together to learn together, to see it for ourselves. But I'm telling you, Robert, it changed her as a person. And I'm much more aware of what I let her listen to, and I'm more strict and less lenient. But if it's happening to my daughter, how many thousands, millions of children is it affecting every single day? In a bad way, in a negative way.
Well, yeah, and I think that's something that is a part of this great awakening that we're seeing, the end of this knowledge apocalypse, or the end of the curated knowledge, narrative, which is the end of the way in which knowledge has been sequestered and suppressed. Um, how did you get through that? What happened after you shut it down? Was there an awareness in her that what was happening?
Well, that's a good question. It was a process. At first, it was resistance and I think a little bit of withdrawal, which that sounds a little bit like it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. I mean, there was a withdrawal period of I need to listen to that music because it made her feel like she fit in and belonged somewhere because everyone else was listening to it. And if she didn't know the new stuff coming out, then she wasn't going to fit in. She wasn't going to have a place. She wouldn't belong. So my husband and I spent a good couple of weeks re-educating her on music and what positive melodies and when you listen to this song, how does it make you feel? Now, when you listen to this song, how do you feel? How does it make you feel emotionally? How does your body feel? What are you thinking in your mind? What's the message in this song? Can you even tell me that there's any message in this song? All of these things, like how many cuss words are in this song? Too numerous to count. Well, how many are in this song? 0, mommy. Do you understand the artist and what they're trying to depict? Is there a story here? Is there some sort of a positive message? Yeah. Is there in this song? No, absolutely not. And I think she needed to slowly see it over time and recognize that, oh, my mom and dad are right. And then she started listening to some of the old school artists that we grew up listening to. And I'm hearing her blast these artists in her room singing the lyrics. And I'm like, so there's a message here, right? And she's like, yeah. And and she got it. Now, of course, I believe in moderation. So we're out at parties or at the store, we're going to hear the mainstream music. Once in a while, we're in the car. If a song comes on, I'll let her listen to it because I don't, you don't want to ever go to the extreme because then your children rebel. But she at least got it. So it took a few weeks, but I think now she doesn't ask for it anymore. She wants to listen to other things. So it expanded and she learned from it. So I just, this is a kind of a little warning for those watching this that have children. Please be careful what they're watching, listening to, because you have no idea the influence it has, not only on their thoughts, but their emotions, their whole well-being can completely shift in a matter of weeks, right in front of your eyes. So it's really important to be diligent and pay attention to their, not only that, but obviously what they're watching. That was a whole thing. We took away all social media for several weeks. We said, nope, you're not even going to watch YouTube, nothing. And I think that those are things that as parents, we have to watch right now, because that's part of the 3D influence and the 3D interference that I talk about that is everywhere. And it's available, and it's just a matter of whether our children get sucked into it or not. And that's our job as the ambassadors, whether you're the parent, the grandparent, the uncle, the friend, whomever, we all can help work through this together. So
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that we really need to think of ourselves, I like the term ambassador, but we are guardians and mentors. We have to give them the information that's available so that they can understand and explore it and find it within themselves. Your story about your daughter reminded me, my youngest daughter turned 35 yesterday, and my
oh,
oldest is
birthday.
36, and my new granddaughter turns 1 this coming Sunday. So I have 2 grandsons and a granddaughter, and they're all of this new starseed generation of energetic frequency stamps that are coming in to usher in this change that we're going to see across humanity. But growing up, my daughters, I was a 60s, 70s rock and roll guitar player, a lot of Dan Fogelberg to Alabama, Skinner, Led Zeppelin, all of that. So as my daughters were growing up in the 90s, they were subjected to dad's music. And when I built my recording studio and then the label, they were subjected to a whole bunch of dad's music. And they they were just inundated with it. And when they finally got married and got out on their own, and that both of them had told me stories like this, where they'd have friends come over for dinner, and they'd be blasting. I made a bunch of playlists for them of all the classic stuff that I liked and that they grew up with, and they'd have that going on in the house as their friends would come in, and they friends would say, "Well, what's that?" And my daughter said, "You don't know who Dan Fogelberg is? You don't know Seals and Croft? You don't know these great
Yeah.
songs and these great bands?" Are going, "No, I've never heard of them." I said, "Well, you can thank my dad because that's what I listened to." So them being able to expose their friends to the music that they grew up with and it stuck with them, and hearing them being able to share that and say, well, you need to learn this stuff. I mean, I just went, I, I did something good
Yeah.
in the music and sound side of, for my children, and it stuck with them. And to this day, we used to take a lot of road trips, and so we had our traditional road CDs back when CDs were, the big deal in cars. And we have there's like 4 different CDs that were the road songs. And we would just drive and everybody singing at the top of their lungs and just, pointing to each other, okay, Dad, you take that, and it was such a rewarding experience that the more parents are able to help these children understand the power of
Mhm.
really good words and music and melodies and rhythms and Gregorian chants are another just extremely profound audible experience that I've seen. The Mozart effect is another well-known thing for people trying to expand their consciousness, expand their thinking and their studying capabilities. And I've seen it. I've watched my girls sit there and listen to Mozart and just get right into whatever they're studying and just focus on it. And being
Mhm.
able to use sound and frequencies for that focus to enhance your learning and your knowledge stack is just extremely important and very profound.
Yeah.
And the important thing too is to realize there's a bunch of crap out there that is detrimental.
Mhm.
And you have to be able to acknowledge that. And in that sense, you've got to be their guardians. You've got to say, yeah, wait a minute, you don't know where that's going. And the whole idea of the peer pressure, it's strange how this last 4 or 5 years during this pandemic, spamdemic, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, how the sequestering of telling people to go to the rooms, we'll let you know when you can come out, go
Right?
contemplate your navel, right? There's been, while it had a lot of uh, detrimental effects, I think that there was some good things that have come out of it in the sense that the people have started to have some introspection.
Mhm.
And introspection, self-examination is one of the most important things that anybody can do and should be doing on a regular basis. If you're not checking yourself, why did I react that way? Why did I think that way? Why did I do this? What's going on here? If you're not constantly evaluating what you either are reacting or you're responding, and if you react, that's the instantaneous expression that you come up with. But if you pull back and you pause and you respond, then you're probably going to have a much more productive uh, journey on the path as you navigate whatever it is you're dealing with.
Right.
It's like with all the noise in the news that we've got right now coming from all these places that are crafting it for their own agendas. I don't believe anything I hear. Everything is suspect,
Yes.
and until I go vet it myself, and I always give everything at least a 48-hour pause. Doesn't matter how crazy or weird it is. Let me go see how this unfolds, because the problem solution reaction, the whole Hegelian dialectic, is afoot big time, and that is the last grasp of the energy cycle that's on its way out. They're throwing everything they can because they know that their time is up. It's like they've gone into the kitchen, turned on all the burners, the ovens, the faucets, and everything's on high. And it's like, well, I'm not going in the kitchen. I'm gonna go sit in the living room. I'm gonna put on my headphones and I'm gonna listen to some solfeggio frequencies or listen to some Mozart or
Right.
bathe in a frequency set that is much more harmonious for my pleasant existence.
Absolutely. I think that's where the spirituality element comes back into our evolution right now of tapping into our innate knowing, our higher self, our trusting our gut, our intuition, however you want to look at it. Because when we're being bombarded almost daily with events, current events, political events, environmental events, weather. I mean, and then not to mention what's happening in people's intimate lives with fights and drama in the family or great things or whatever it may be. We're being bombarded without a lot of truths and lies. It's like that game, two truths
Hmm.
and a lie. And we have to figure out what's real and what isn't. And we can't depend on each other. I can't call Robert up every day and say, Robert, tell me what you think about the bridge. I don't want to get my channel taken down, but the bridge
Yeah.
collapsing the
Any
other day.
any
You
of
know,
the
what do you
yeah, any of
think
the latest
happened
stuff.
there? I can't say the words, but like, okay, great. I could talk to you and we can give each other our thoughts, but ultimately I need to go within and decide for myself. For that example, like, was it nefarious? Was it natural? Come up with my own conclusion. And again, no matter what I decide,
Mhm.
and no matter what you decide, and no matter what anybody out there thinks about that event or any other event, ultimately it is derived from our perception of consciousness, which is different for everybody. But I believe that there are many truths. So you might wholeheartedly believe something, and I might wholeheartedly believe something different. And who's going to say to me that I'm wrong and you're right? And who's going to say to me that I'm right and you're wrong? We can't do that. So we just have to move forward. I believe that's one of our biggest tests right now as a collective is this discernment process, is deciphering the truth within us using our innate knowing and our intuition, but not looking at other people and judging their innate knowing and the conclusions that they come to, because it's all about the lens of their perception and how they are perceiving a lot of these things and the emotions that they have and the traumas and the triggers. all of these variables are going to disrupt and distort and even amplify our conclusions. And so it's all about being patient with everybody right now, and then how we can go within. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I have my fundamental premise is that, and I went through this with my daughters a few years ago when they came out to visit. We were driving all over Santa Fe and Taos and just taking in the sights, and it was just wonderful. And one of the things that my daughters learned is they always get a dose of dad, whether they want it or not. They know that dad's going to drop something on them, and they're going to have to sit there and either think about it or respond or do something. And they've actually gotten to the point where and maybe they might be doing this just to placate dad, but they call me up and they ask me what I think about things. How do you feel about this, Dad? What's your thoughts on this? And I always give them, the bottom line, which I always start with. At the end of the day, it's all speculation. Everybody's personal perspective is based on their own speculation. There is no truth other than what you know within your own self. No one can tell us that, for example, what I started with consciousness. Everything is my personal speculation. So if we look at all of the stuff that this tsunami, this deluge of data that we're just inundated with, you have to have I think basically what we're also seeing is the rise of the common sense bullshit meter. And it's an innate part characteristic of our consciousness, and basically it's just based on resonance. Does something feel like it is right or doesn't? And that is based on a frequency of resonance and harmony or disharmony. And that's the first filter that we all have. It's just that sense of, does this feel right? Does it feel not? And you start with that, and then you use whatever information and knowledge you have, and you speculate by using discernment, and then you discriminate on that, and then you cast judgment. And that's just how it works. But those words have all been weaponized. You're not supposed to discriminate. That's not your job. You're not supposed to judge. How can you do that? Well, judgment is something that we do in our mental process every time we think of something. We're making judgment. We're passing judgment based on the discernment and the discrimination that we've placed on the information we just got. It's just how it works.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take those words and you make them negative and you tell people you can't do that, what's happening is they're screwing with the natural function of the mind. And that creates confusion, and that creates the chaos, and that gets dumped into the conversation. And the next thing you know, there's an overload of crap. And you sit there and you go, okay, well, I started here. How did I get up over here? Well, you look at all the other players that were involved and how they took and manipulated everything and on your path to getting to where everybody is. And it was just a bunch of nonsense. It was created to cause the chaos.
Right.
So it goes back to that first principle thinking that I was talking about and the nut of the nugget. I had to go back and start with, where is it that consciousness is and how does it function? What are its characteristics? What are its attributes? How does it work? So once I started nailing those pieces down, it was so much easier to fix my filters and my framework to parry off the crap and to get and find the good stuff and get as much of that as possible, the stuff that resonates. So kind of a long way around what you were saying, but I think that everything is speculation. We are all responsible for that speculation. We use common things in being able to observe, to discern, to discriminate, and to judge the information that we're getting. And we need to fine tune all of those tools as much as possible. We need to teach children that that's how our minds work. That's how we learn. We learn by pattern recognition. We have an experience and it has certain metrics and a pattern around it. We learn something else new and we immediately see the mapping, the things that are analogous to one another. That's how we learn. It's not magic, it's not science, it's not a philosophy or anything else. It's just that's the process. So teaching that process and getting people to realize the simple fundamentals of the reality that we inhabit and that we experience with our consciousness is to me the most important thing that is going to be the best tools in this paradox of change that we're going through. And I mean, talking with you, you clearly have reached that point of awareness where you see and you feel and you are engaged in the change, in the transformative disruption that's going on. And it's so powerful and just it's very, very peaceful and exciting for me to see somebody like you and Heidi and what you guys are doing for this next generation, for this transformation, for what we are going through, and what's going to be on the other side, because it's going to be so amazing. The minds will be blown. And the thing that we have to realize is that it's not everybody's time. Not everybody's going to be able to get through this in the way that we would hope. You can't help everybody. You can only provide the opportunity for those who are ready and looking for the
Yeah.
help to help them through that process. But you must stay on the path of the energetic transformation, the fabulous frequency sets that we are all inhabiting and being, and how we transform that going forward. And it's just, oh, I am so excited. I'm very enthusiastic about the future, and I'm just blessed and honored to be here and be a part of it.
I'm so honored to know you, Robert. I'm so glad that we were introduced through a beautiful mutual friend of ours, Heidi. I just adore her and her work as well. And I love meeting people like you that are very just, you're very just humble and just, I'm just accumulating knowledge throughout my life. And I'm not trying to put it on anybody or put anyone down. It's just me being me. And I like people like that. I don't like people who put on a show. I don't like arrogant people. I don't do well in those environments. And to your point, I think one of the most important questions we can ask ourselves right now as individuals is, what is the role that I'm playing in this right now? Because I ask myself this all the time. And I also reflect on situations, and I bring my children into it when there's drama involved. I'm like, okay, well, I take responsibility for my role in this and my part that I played. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes I have to say, mom, you know, acted inappropriately. All right, I overreacted about this. So I'm taking responsibility for the role that I played in that. But I think more importantly, moving forward, it's what role do people watching this want to play in this ascension right now? Are you a positive influence? Are you a grid worker? Are you a light worker? Are you holding the space for others? Are you a mentor? Are you an ambassador? Are you all of those things? Are you a little bit of everything? Are you none of those things? Are you unsure? And that's okay. We don't have to know the answer right now. The point is just to get yourself thinking about, how am I involving myself? What's my contribution to the collective right now? Even if it's just your thoughts. Where are your thoughts taking you? What are you trying to co-create? What are you manifesting? What are you projecting out? That is really important right now. And it doesn't mean you need to go out and start a nonprofit or do anything big. It's just about asking yourself the question, what role am I playing right now? And start there. And I can clearly tell you my role, a lot of things that I'm doing, and I'm clearly passionate about it. And I want to be. I want people to see that I'm passionate about children, about animals, about helping the collective as much as I personally can. And I take responsibility for that. I take it very serious. You have your role in so many different things. I think it's absolutely beautiful. And I love having two people with such passion come together, because hopefully through this video, we can inspire so many who are watching right now and uplift them and motivate them in a positive way and not bring them down with the doom and gloom. And there's plenty of that. We don't need any more of that.
I completely agree, and I think that the real one of my passions and purpose is to provide as much information in the form of the reality of hope and of purpose. What you just described is what I was talking about earlier, the self-reflection, the introspection, the self-examination. What is my role? And to me, that process leads to the authenticity of self. Who are you? Who am I? What is it that makes us tick? That is our peccadillos, our preferences, our biases, the things that we resonate with. How do you find those things? Well, the
Mhm.
first thing you got to do is get rid of all the crap you've been told about it. and just go dive into it yourself. And what is that? That means you're being responsible to yourself. You're being responsible to the authenticity and therefore the self-actualization of what you really are, not what everybody's told you, not what society and history and belief systems and all these other things. There's an innate essence of the reality of self that once you begin that search and you go try to find out what is it that makes me me, and what are the things that I have that are good for me, but I can also share or that I can give? What energies can I help with children, with loved ones, friends, family, the collective, the planet, the cosmos? Because we are all a part of that energy. Consciousness made us, and we are engaged with it. We have the opportunity to make the most out of that if we are authentic and true to ourselves by taking responsibility and being accountable for
Yes.
us. If you don't take care of yourself and manifest the most important reality that you are, you're not going to be able to do that for or give to anyone else. And
Yeah.
that's one of the most profound, subtle, simple things that I think is missing. It's
Yeah.
taught, it's like you were saying earlier, um, there's a little bit of truth in everything. And that's one of the things I actually had a Christian ministry back in the 80s. I had a music band, and we used to go and preach to prisons and youth authorities and rest homes, and I was beating everybody over the head with the Bible. I was like, wow, this is interesting and pretty intense. But every time I asked more questions about it, I kept getting fewer answers. And then finally, the only answer was, you just need to believe. I said, well, I can do the believe thing, but I need to know. I need to feel. I need to have that resonance that says, this is true to me, to my own speculation. So I had to be true to myself. I had to be authentic. I had to have responsibility and be accountable to me as manifesting whoever and whatever it is that I'm supposed to do. And
Yeah.
until I focused on that, I was just going to fumble and flail about just like a lot of people are now. So seeing that in you is a real blessing, and I am grateful to
Yeah.
know you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert. And I'd love to have you come back because there's a lot of things that we didn't get to cover today, and I really want to get into those things. So we're gonna have to do a part 2 if you're okay with that.
Would love to. Be my
Okay.
honor and pleasure.
Well, I'm going to put all of your links below, but just tell everybody real quickly how they can find you, the best way to learn more about you, and then I'll put the links, like I said, below in the description as well.
Well, I'm scattered all over the place, lots of stuff out there, but the easiest way to find me and whatever I am up to and doing is at robertbauer.com. And all of the music and the meditations and the podcasts and everything else are on that one site, and you can find all the links there.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I like when it's simple like that. It makes it easy for people to find you. So thank you so much for this amazing conversation today. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I hope those of you watching enjoyed it as well. Until next time, we'll have Robert back. I'll see you guys very soon and see you guys later. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.